In October of 2021, I wrote myself a letter and I used an app called Future Me to deliver that letter 1 year into the future. I wrote down various aspects of my life that I wanted to see myself grow in over the coming year. And one of those things that I really wanted to do was to write 4 books under a pen name that I had established back in 2018 but hadn't done a whole lot with. As I'm recording this video, it is November 1st, 2022, and I'm happy to announce that I have written and self-published 3 books under this pen name. It's not likely that I will self-publish the 4th one, although I have started writing the 4th one. I'm super excited about that. So I wanted to really make this video to share what I've learned in this process and hopefully what you can learn from this so that you can apply that if you have aspirations of writing and self-publishing your own books. Today's video is sponsored by my own course, Write to 1K, and it is the course where I show you how to go from scratch to making your first $1,000 as a freelance writer. You can go to this link right here to check the course out. Just wanted to say that this tea in water is so delicious. You should try it. The specific one I use is called Tazo tea. But anyway, that's beside the point. Let's begin to talk about self-publishing these 3 books. So as the title says, I self-published these 3 books over the last 3 months. It doesn't mean I wrote all 3 books in the last 3 months. Some people can do that, not me. The first book actually took me almost a year to write. The second book took me around 6 months. And then the third book actually took around 6 or 7 weeks. So obviously I've improved in my craft, and that's the first point I want to make. So when I made a decision to self-publish, to write these novels, now by the way, these are all fiction novels. They are fiction novels under the genre sweet Christian romance, okay? 2 books are already released through Amazon's Kindle program, and 1 book is currently on pre-order. Now, the first thing I learned throughout this journey is it's really important that if you want to write fiction, or even if you just want to write non-fiction, right, that you learn some kind of craft, right, writing craft. It's not enough to just know how to write. You have to be able to hold people's attention. You have to have storytelling abilities, and also depending on the genre you're writing in, it's important to know what I've come to learn as story beats. What does that mean? So like there's a reason why so many of us watch TV shows like CSI or NCIS. They follow a specific formula and a specific pattern. We know that this is what's going to happen, and usually this is exactly what happens with books as well. People, when they pick up a romance book in a particular genre, okay, want particular beats. They want particular story beats. So if you plan to write in and for that group of people who read in that genre, it's important that you stick to the story beats. Now, this doesn't mean that you cannot add your own original ideas. Of course, these characters I'm creating, they're different. They're not characters that I've read anywhere. They're characters based, some of them are based on me, some of them are based on my friends, some of them are based on life situations that I've seen myself or others go through. And yet I'm able to hit all those story beats. And so really taking a step back, and I actually ended up buying a course, and it was a membership course that I was paying for every single month. And being part of that course was so eye-opening because I was able to take in the material. I was able to learn, you know, this is how you write a good romance story. This is how you set the climax to be. This is how you craft like a backstory. So I really spent time learning the craft, right? And I think that was why the first book took a long time, because I spent time learning the craft so that I could deliver good books. Because if you write and you just say, okay, I have a story in my heart, and you write and then, you know, somebody picks it up and doesn't really care for it, they're not going to buy your subsequent books. Which brings me to my next point. So this whole dream of becoming a fiction author really started in earnest early of 2021. And so I purchased some books, and one I bought was this book right here, called How to Market a Book. It's by the company Reedsy. And one of the first things I read in that book was, you're not going to make money off of one book. If you think you're going to write one book and you're going to make all your money off of that, that's a unicorn event. Okay, it doesn't really happen to a lot of people. A lot of people make income or make money from having multiple books, whether that's fiction or non-fiction, right? And this is true whether you're self-publishing or you're publishing, traditionally. So the biggest thing I took from that book was write in series, especially if you're going to write fiction, write in series. And so currently, the 2 books I have, plus the third one that's releasing on November 18th, are in a series, right? And there's a 4th book in that series that I began working on. So writing a series from the beginning, or having a series in mind from the beginning, is helpful. And it's so true, because what ends up happening, I get to see this in the analytics behind the scenes on Amazon, is that if somebody picks up the first book and they love it, they will go read the second book. And then I had this standalone novel I wrote way back in November of 2018. At that time, NaNoWriMo, right? NaNoWriMo is happening right now. That's the National Novel Writing Month. It happens every year, where people set aside time to write like a 50,000 word book in 1 month. Anyway, so during the NaNoWriMo of 2018, I actually wrote a novella, a shorter book than the books I'm currently writing. And just self-published it. I didn't announce it or anything. But now that I started being intentional with the books I'm currently publishing, started promoting those, now I'm beginning to see people go back to read that book, even though that's not a book I'm advertising or marketing. Because when they picked up this one book, they're like, oh, this is so good, let me read her next one. They read that one, and because I didn't have the third one yet, they went and read that standalone book. And that's pretty exciting to me. Writing to market was something that I had heard from another author. I've actually heard it from several authors. And essentially, when you write to markets, you are writing to a pre-existing audience. Now, you may think that, but this author didn't write to a pre-existing audience, but look at how her book was turned into like a Netflix movie. And the reality is that that's not true. Okay, any author who has done incredibly well, any author at all, yes, they may have some really, really groundbreaking ideas and thoughts in their books. But if you actually take the time to study what they did is tap into an existing audience's problem or need or something, a social problem that's really going on in people's lives, right? They tapped into that. So there was a pre-existing audience. It's just that those people didn't know that they were a pre-existing audience, but there was a pre-existing audience that wanted to read this stuff. And so writing to market has been one of the things that I did. So earlier on, I mentioned that I write in the genre sweet Christian romance, right? This is a big genre on Amazon and in several other, book marketplaces, but Amazon owns about 70% or so of the ebook market. So it's kind of hard to talk about self-publishing without talking about them, right? But it's a huge category. It has subcategories and subgenres of it on Amazon. And so once I had done my research, and a tool that I use to do this research is one known as Publisher Rocket. There are other tools out there that you can use, but because I really wanted to gain momentum, I actually got this Publisher Rocket way back in, I want to say 2019, making sure that I did my research on Amazon's book categories and putting my book in the right categories has been really helpful. Otherwise, the book would have ended up like my first book, right? My first book that I wrote in 2018 and then put up on Amazon, and I thought like everybody be coming to rush to buy it. No, that is not what happened. In this case, because I had done the research, because I was intentional about it, even though I was just starting out, I did begin to see sales the very first month I started publishing. It was very little, but it gave me hope that, oh my goodness, like people are already picking this up. This is hugely, very much encouraging, right? So writing to market is really important. You want to write for a pre-existing audience. This again doesn't mean you cannot put your own unique flavor and things in the book. You definitely can, but writing to a pre-existing audience or writing to market and also hitting those story beats that these readers are so used to is crucial if you want to step into writing fiction, especially. Now, I think I mentioned this, but let me mention it again. Publishing one book, all right, is not going to profoundly change your career, right? I have a few books that I published. I published Win at Freelance Writing. I published Content That Sizzles and Sells, and some of you have bought these books, given me reviews. Thank you very much to all of you. But having just those two books wasn't going to significantly change my life. Yes, it's made me some money, but it's not enough for me to like quit my job or like become a millionaire on, right? One of the things I've done, apart from the course I talked about earlier, is really also like go on YouTube. You'll be amazed at how much free information is out there. All right, there are also like Facebook communities out there for self-publishing. And I've joined some of these communities and I've read posts, just learning from people who are doing well. And one other thing that is consistent across the board, without fail, these authors have all published more than one book, usually tens of books, some people even hundreds of books. That's the hundreds is pretty rare. Most of the time it's like in the tens. And listen, they didn't start today, okay? They didn't just start and then become successful. That's actually, again, it's a unicorn kind of thing to happen. But usually over the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, even the last 3 years, they've just been really laser focused and written and self-published multiple books. And that's what's driving their income, because when somebody picks up book number 5 and then they love it and then they're like, what, like they have 10 other books, they can go back and read the person's backlist, and again, that drives that income machine. And then probably you're thinking, but gee, like how are you keeping up with all this writing? You have a full-time job, you have a family, blah blah blah. It's so true, right? I have all this stuff, but that video I did on how I write 1,000 words per day, one of the other things I've learned, right, is, well, first of all, watch that video. But one of the things I've also learned is that sometimes we are expecting to sit down and like crank out a book in 3 days, and that doesn't really happen, okay? So like I mentioned earlier, it took me almost a year to write the first book, and that was because I was learning storycraft. The second book took around 6 months or so. Again, I was still like learning my craft. The third one took around 7 weeks. And so it's taught me commitment. You have to be committed. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that don't think that writing 500 words a day and writing 500 words tomorrow, like it adds up. Every little bit adds up. So never feel like, oh, if I don't crank out 5,000 words, if I don't crank out like 20 pages today, then I'm a big failure. No. There have been times I've sat down and all I was able to write is a paragraph. There's been times I sat down to write and like somebody's asking me for something. There have been times I've stayed up late or woken up early to write. So there is, sometimes there's a little bit of sacrifice, and also there's a little bit of, I can't do everything today, and so I'm going to do just a little bit. I'm going to write for 15 minutes. I'm going to write for 20 minutes. I'm going to write for 5 minutes even, and it seems so silly, right? I'm writing for 5 minutes. What's that going to do? But trust me, you write 5 minutes every day for a week. If you write 5 minutes, I'm pretty sure you could crank out 100 words, right? In a week, 7 days times 100, that's 700 words. Okay, you do that multiple times over and over again, you end up with a book. And that's all I've done. That's just the principle I've used, and that's the principle I plan to keep on using. Currently, NaNoWriMo has just started. This morning, I was able to write around 1,500 words towards a nonfiction book. Now, for me personally, this self-publishing journey that I'm going on, I'm planning to give you updates every 3 months. So this will be the first, and I'm going to give you an update in another 3 months. But my goal really is to publish both fiction and nonfiction. I'm currently working on a nonfiction book, and my goal is to finish it by the end of November. If I write 1,500 1,500 words every day for the next 30 days. Okay, that's going to give me around 45,000 words. And based on my experience, just my experience writing this year, a 45,000 word book is almost 200 pages. And I'll show you. I have a book here, right? And this is about the thickness of the book. This book was about 42,000 words, right? This book is 5 by 8. So 45,000 words is going to give you a book about this thick. That is so exciting, right? And you do multiple of those per year. You write, you know, if I keep up with what I have now, which the last book was around 40,000 words, 7 weeks, right? If I keep that up, imagine having a book like that every 3 months, even every 6 months, every year, if that's all you can do. And see how that could change your life.